Hi everyone, Aidan here with etrailer. Today we're going to be taking a look at the RockyMounts AfterParty platform style bike rack, and we're going to see how it fits on the back of our 2016 Ford F-150. The AfterParty can carry up to 2 bikes, and it's going to be a great option for the F-150 because it's a swing away bike rack. And what that means is we've got an arm down here that's controlled by this handle, and we can use it to gain full access to our truck bed. Now this handle I've tightened up quite a bit, but when you loosen it up, it'll release that arm. So just keep spinning it until you hear a small click, just like that. And we can release this pull pin at the back. And what that will do is allow you to swing the whole thing away 90 degrees and gain full unhindered access to the bed of our truck. So this is a great bike rack if you're going to leave it in the hitch full time because you don't have to sacrifice this feature of your truck. It's great if you take your vehicle camping so you can set up at the campsite and again have access to your cargo space. But the other nice thing about the F-150 is if you've got the bed step, you'll be able to use that too because we get the bike rack completely out of the way. So really, no feature of our F-150 is lost just because we have the bike rack in place. When folding it back in, there's 2 pins to release, one in the middle and one at the end there. You kind of have to get that first one started before doing the outer pin. And at some point, you'll need to switch sides and push the bike rack in the rest of the way. But when you do, that first pin we saw will click in, and you can just retighten the handle at the bottom to get things secured. But you also have the option to tilt the rack away from you by pulling this handle at the rear. This is really nice because you don't always have time or maybe the space, say in like a grocery store parking lot, to swing the whole rack away. And the tilt will allow us to lower the tailgate and still get at least some partial access. Now I'll say this is a close fit. There is a fraction of an inch of space right here, but it does not touch the bike rack or the tailgate. I'll say though, if you were to put some weight down on the tailgate, say slide a cooler out or something, or try to step up into the bed, you might make some contact there. But for me personally, since it doesn't touch just in this state right here, even if I put weight on it, I personally wouldn't mind if it were my own truck because you're not going to be putting that much pressure on the rack. Not only do we want to know if it works well with the truck, but does the AfterParty work well with your bikes? And I think you're in luck there too because this will work with a lot of different types. It's a dual wheel mount style, which means we're holding just by the tires on the bike. It's a great option then for carbon frame or alternative frame bikes because we're not relying on that frame to hold it. And with a 60-pound weight capacity per bike, we can support some e-bikes too. So again, just a really wide range there, and it's going to be a generally accommodating rack. To unload the bikes, we've got these blue levers that you can press in to release the tension and flip up to completely disengage the ratcheting mechanism that keeps these arms held down. They might get caught on the tread of your tire if you've got something like a mountain bike, but not too bad to undo. The second one's always a little bit easier because the bike is somewhat freed, so keep a hand on it. And from there, all you gotta do is lift it down. I'll say it's a tall bike rack, and because your F-150 certainly has good ground clearance, you will have to lift a fair amount just to get the bike loaded and unloaded. And especially when considering this with e-bikes, if you're not comfortable with the weight, it might be a little difficult. But it certainly will be better than something like a tailgate pad that requires us to get the bike up over the side of the vehicle and into the bed. And when you're folding those arms back down, just flip the levers so that that ratcheting mechanism engages and they don't open back up on you. And you'll see looking closer at it that we've got this continuous tray throughout the whole rack. And I really like this design personally because it makes the bikes easy to load side by side. You can really put them anywhere on the tray, shifting them side to side so that handlebars and seats don't touch one another. And because these trays are kind of in the stadium style, you're gonna help with clearance even more. So generally, two bikes of a similar size are not gonna have any problem sitting by one another on this rack. But some measurements to keep in mind on your F-150 is first gonna be ground clearance. Like I said, this is a really tall rack, and at the back end, we're working with 29 inches of ground clearance, which at that point, it's not a matter of bottoming out, it's a matter of how high you have to lift your bikes. But we can also go from the bumper of the F-150 to the furthest point out, which will be sitting at 30 inches. Overall, not adding a whole lot of length to the back of the vehicle, but the F-150 is a big truck, so every little bit counts. And like I mentioned before, you're probably going to leave this type of rack in the hitch full time, so the storage position is really important here. It's going to take up a lot less space now, cutting that distance down by half, sitting at only 15 inches from the bumper. So this makes it a lot easier to drive around with and park with, and you can still use the swing away arm, and if anything, it's even easier to reach now. When leaving it back here, it's not going to block your backup camera. You'll likely see the rack a little bit, but still get great use and visibility. One thing it will block though is your license plate, and that really goes for the folded position like this, or when it's down flat with bikes loaded up, just because, again, it's a taller rack and the license plate sits down pretty low. And at the hitch, it's working with our 2" by 2" receiver tube, and it comes with a locking anti-rattle bolt. The anti-rattle keeps things nice and solid in the hitch, and that lock and key will be key-to-like to a locking point up on top of the rack too. And here's what that point at the very end of the rack looks like, right next to our handle and rear tray. Your rack will come with a pretty heavy-duty chain that's wrapped in fabric, so you can lock your bikes up with the rack when you're not around. But as far as the afterparty goes, I'm a huge fan. It's one that I've personally used on my own truck quite a bit, and I think it fits really well on our F-150 today. But like I mentioned, it's a tall rack, and if you don't like the idea of having to lift your e-bikes that high to load it, then something else would be a better fit for you, like a bike rack with a ramp. There's plenty of options available for that, but I'd personally recommend the Ceres MHS Duo. It doesn't come included with a ramp, but you can buy one separately, and that rack has a great weight capacity of 80 pounds per bike. And typically it fits really well on trucks, so I think it'd be a pretty strong contender. You just then would lose out on the swing away arm, which for me is why I like the afterparty so much. But at that point, it really just comes down to your personal preference. Do you want that full unhindered access to the bed, or is a ramp more important to ease the loading process? Either way you go, I think you're gonna have a really solid option for a bike rack on the back of your 2016 Ford F-150. My name's Aidan, and thanks for watching.
Here we are on our test course. As we hit the alternating bumps, you can see what it would be like to hit a pothole on the road. Our solid speed bumps simulate pulling in and out of a driveway or hitting a speed bump in a parking lot. We use the slalom portion of our course to simulate the side-to-side movement, such as turning corners or evasive maneuvers.